resulted in his suspension from the party. He's been readmitted. We asked the Labour Party for an interview and they said no one was available. We asked Chris Williamson himself, but we're still waiting for a response from him. We can talk to Tosh McDonald, who is a close friend of Chris Williamson, former ASLEF president and councillor in Doncaster. Tosh, welcome to the programme. Was it the right decision to readmit Chris?
Yes, I think it was the right decision to readmit Chris. I think the body that looks at it has looked at it and come up with a decision that Chris should be allowed back into the party, or his suspension should be lifted.
What do you think, Charlie?
I think it was the wrong decision. I think it sends a terrible message about the Labour Party. Chris was suspended for what was described as a pattern of behaviour. It wasn't just saying that the Labour was too apologetic. He had, over time, aligned himself with people who had either been expelled from the party for anti-Semitism or people who had committed unarguable anti-Semitic acts. For example, he had signed a petition and circulated in support of a man called Gilad Atzmon, who'd been banned by Islington from playing jazz in an Islington venue. What Gilad Atzmon had done, he'd promoted Holocaust denial, he'd blamed the Grenfell Tower fire on people he described as Jerusalemites, and he'd suggested that Hitler's attacks on the Jews had been in response to the Jews declaring war on Germany. These are terrible anti-Semitic things, and when asked why did you do that, he said, oh, he didn't realise. But of course, surely if you were petitioning Islington to let the jazz singer back, the jazz musician back in, you'd have found out why he'd been banned in the first place. I think what the Labour Party's committee did today was wrong because they didn't even push it up to the full-blown disciplinary tribunal, which must have been the minimum that should have been done.
Right. Let's listen to Chris Williamson. He's responded to those allegations that we've just heard there from Charlie Falconer.
Well, I heard what Charlie Falconer said, and he's wrong in what he said actually about me. He claimed I'd signed a petition relating to somebody called Gilad Atzmon. That's not true. In fact, I didn't sign the petition at all. But I don't accept his assertion. Look, Labour's an anti-racist party, and, you know, we're defined by our anti-racist credentials. The Labour Party were the backbone of the Anti-Nazi League in the 1970s. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn, the leader, as a record second to none in standing up to all forms of bigotry and racism. And, you know, we've obviously got to work together.
Charlie?
First of all, in relation to the petition, in relation to Gilad Atzmon, he supported that by social media, so he may be right when he says he didn't sign it, but he supported it. Secondly, he's absolutely right about the Labour Party's role in relation to the Anti-Nazi League. What we did in the 70s as honourable conduct against racism gives us no free pass in relation to anti-Semitism. And what Chris has done is align himself with the anti-Semitics, and that is absolutely unacceptable.
Right. Tosh, what do you say to that? You've just heard a wealth of evidence that has been laid out by Charlie Falconer, and that Chris Williamson has given succour to people who've been expelled from the party for anti-Semitism. Why should he have been allowed back in?
He should be allowed back in because Chris Williamson, as somebody I know really well, a good friend and comrade, has not got a racist bone in his body, not got a bigoted bone in his body. Now, look, I'm proud to have worked in the trade union movement for many years, and I'm proud of my union, ASLEF. We just launched On Tracks for Diversity in Parliament last week, and if I can be allowed to speak without being interrupted, it would help. Then, and what we've done, we're proud.
No one's interrupted you.
We've stamped out in workplaces. We've worked against all forms of racism and bigotry. And the way we've done that is not when somebody says something wrong, jumping down the throat and having hysteria. What we have done is we've tried to educate people in what's wrong. I mean, I've been accused of anti-Semitism for something I said which I don't see as anti-Semitism. We should be educating people, not witch hunting people, not having mass hysteria when somebody says
have you been re-educated then, in that sense, if you said something anti-Semitic? Should Chris Williamson be re-educated before being allowed back into the Labour Party?
Well, we should all be re-educated. If any of us are making mistakes, we should be re-educated. We shouldn't have a riot after us or hysteria following us about. I said when I spoke at International Brigade Memorial Trust annual commemoration, that I'm too young to remember Spain. My Spain was the anti-apartheid movement. And I said, for people coming into the movement today, the thing that internationalises them, Palestine. For that, I was social media, I was trolled for being an anti-Semite. I don't know what's anti-Semitic about that.
Right.
I don't know why that is anti-Semitic.
Right, but the
Nobody
party,
has ever explained
but the
that
party
to me.
has standards, and the party said that Chris Williamson, and let's talk about him, because he is the person who is being looked at today and been readmitted to the party, and the party found he had breached standards. Why is it that only after a few months he's been readmitted to the party when Charlie Falconer has said that actually it should have been taken much more seriously because he's backed people who have repeatedly made anti-Semitic comments?
But again, people are supposedly making anti-Semitic comments. We need a wider discussion on what is and what isn't anti-Semitic. As I've given my example of what I said, and I don't know what is anti-Semitic about
All right, well,
that.
let's ask...
Well, I gave some examples.
Find nothing wrong with it.
Would anybody doubt that it's anti-Semitic to deny the Holocaust? Would anybody doubt it's anti-Semitic to blame the Grenfell Tower fire on, quote, Jerusalemites? Would anybody suggest it is anti-Semitic to say that Hitler's actions against the Jews were a direct response to Jews declaring war on Germany?
They are plainly anti-Semitic.
Yeah, so we're not...
But
sorry.
many people are being accused of anti-Semitism and not knowing why. Yeah,
Right.
we can criticise the state of Israel and the way
I completely appreciate, Tosh, that there may be legitimate issues about whether or not this is a legitimate, in a particular case, attack on the state of Israel, which is within what is acceptable. The things that Chris approved of or supported were not even in the same planet as those sorts of issues. They were absolutely explicitly anti-Semitic. Not what he said, but the people he was supporting. And that is the problem, because it gives the strongest possible impression by letting him off with a rap on the knuckles that the Labour Party are perfectly happy for people as senior as Chris to line themselves up with anti-Semitics.
Tosh?
Well, I don't think Chris would knowingly align himself with somebody who's anti-Semitic. I don't believe that for 1 minute. Again, we come back to education, not lynch mobs.
Is that what this has been, a lynch mob, the Labour Party actually investigating Chris Williamson?
Well, the way the whole anti-Semitism thing seems to come that way. It's somebody says something wrong, and then there's an attack, a wave of criticism. We should be educating people. If somebody makes a mistake, if what I said at the International Brigade event was wrong, tell me why it's wrong. And educate us. Don't just lynch us and jump on us.
All right, Tosh, thank you.
Tosh, just one more thing. Chris arranged for a film showing of a thing called The Witch Hunt, which is about Jackie Walker. And Jackie Walker came to the Commons, and she had been expelled by the Labour Party for conduct unbecoming. I'm quite sure that's the precise formulation of the rule, which is about her allegation that the Jews were responsible for the slave trade. Why was Chris promoting that event after Jackie Walker had been expelled? Isn't that lining up with somebody whom the Labour Party has thrown out for behaviour that is anti-Semitic?
But Jackie Walker is a black Jewish woman, and she has her opinions, and she's made those opinions known. The party has gone through its procedures, and she's been kicked out of the party. When I saw the film Witch Hunt, which I think was a very well-made film, and I asked some questions that need answering, Jackie Walker was still suspected at that point, not expelled. I don't know when Chris arranged the film with that showing of that film.
He was showing the film in February 2019, and she'd already been expelled.
All right, Tosh, we're going to stop it there. The line is a little bit bad, but thank you very much for joining us on the programme. Are you doing your investigation? Is that continuing?
I stepped back when the Equalities Commission stepped forward, but I think it's going to take a lot of time. the existence of the Equality Commission report is not making any difference to the way that the Labour Party appears to be dealing with it. So I'm keen to see if I can do something to try and deal with what is an incredibly corrosive and indeed existential threat to the Labour Party.
Why are you still in the Labour Party then?
Because I very much believe in the things that the Labour Party believe in, but I do not believe in anti-Semitism.
Right, but your colleagues left, a number of them, partly over the issue of anti-Semitism. Are you not giving succour to people within the party whom you think are anti-Semitic?
I'm not giving succour to people who I believe to be anti-Semitic, and I'm not leaving.
Right, and that's definite?
That's definite.
All right, and that investigation by the Equalities Commission, of course, is only the second investigation they've done into racism in a political party. The first one was the BNP. How does that make you feel?
Ashamed, but I think it's a good thing that there is such an investigation.
All right, we're going to move on. Take a look